Okay, welcome back. Hope you had a good lunch. I had leftover pizza. It was just enough for me. If we're ready to continue into determination of analysis of need, why don't you give me a green thumbs up? Let me know you're here and ready to roll.
Sorry, is the instructor talking?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I think not yet.
Yes, he is talking.
I can't seem to hear him.
Okay.
It's still showing spinning.
Okay. Okay, we'll try this again. Can anybody hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I guess I had to read my computer. I'm sorry about that. If we're ready to go on to determination of needs analysis, why don't you give me a green thumbs up to let me know we're there and ready to go. All right. So the first step in acquisition planning is always determine needs or needs analysis. Once a need for supplies or services has been established, the decisions made exactly how to fulfill that need can be something the FAA can do in-house. Is it something that can be done with an existing contract? Or do we have to create a new contract and do a whole new procurement in order for that to happen? If decision is made to fulfill with a new contract, then we have to follow a procurement plan. So in this step, we're going to determine what does the FAA need? How is it best met? Is this need available already in the commercial marketplace? Are the requirements acceptable as a basis for procurement? And what supply sources are appropriate for this procurement? So in forecasting our needs, and it's a big part of the annual planning effort, it helps support the mission of the different requiring activities in a timely manner, make sure that the budget dollars are available for any need and potential procurement effort, and also make sure that we comply with the AMS procurement policy. So here's a couple quick questions. Who at the FAA determines the need? Who is it in your organizations that determines if there's a need to seek fulfillment possibly from the marketplace? Okay, program office, very often. The program office for an individual organization. Okay, everybody's same program, that's true. The users or the program office working with the users. How do you determine what's needed? Is it a written process? Okay. Issues sometimes come up or strategic direction that dictates the need for some kind of a change or some kind of a new system or something. User input very often. Needs analysis. hopefully part of an annual sort of strategic effort. You know, you identify where we are now, but where we want to be, a desired future state, and that establishes a gap. And this gap should be or could be used to drive a lot of the needs analysis. Put together a workable package to help identify the needs. Is the determination of need different if you're procuring a product or a service? Okay, Naomi and Jane both said yes. Samaya also yes. How is the process different for a product or service? Say, a product in my mind is a lot easier. You just come up with a specification, either performance specification, functional specification, sometimes design specification, although you kind of steer away from that. Service, on the other hand, you define a statement of work. You know, what are the deliverables? What's the timeline for that? So it's a little different. Determination and planning, expectation and scope are different, very much so, Matthew. Service requires evaluation, yeah. Also service, it takes a lot more effort to sort of scratch the surface, make sure once somebody's providing a service that you're getting the desired results of that service. Because you have, you know, the service that's provided, but that's not really what the organization's after. Yes, there's a deliverable, but generally the organization is trying to achieve a benefit accrued from that service. So it's a second order removed from the actual deliverable. So are we actually achieving the benefit that we put in, that we desired as part of a scope of work statement for a service? Doris made a good point. Also, a lot of times it could take 6 to 18 months for a service contract before you start to really realize or can evaluate, are we getting what we wanted? Yes or no? What about impacts to other areas? How might the SWIM contract impact other areas, this proposed SWIM procurement, impact other areas within the FAA besides the people actually doing the procuring? Okay, system owners might have to fund mods to their systems. So there might be some tailoring, there might be some customizing in order to interface with the legacy systems. There's certain data owners. Training, that's a big one. Everybody's going to use this new system. You know, training is one of those things, a lot of times when you write a statement of work for something like that, training gets left out. The whole installation, integration, startup, it's easy to overlook that stuff or not give it sufficient billing. When I used to do operating systems for manufacturers, the widest used materials requirements planning system in the world is still Microsoft Excel, because people on the shop floor, they don't trust the big integrated system, so they run Microsoft Excel on the side just to double check, make sure their needs are being met. The same thing could easily happen with an FAA system. People are still running the old point-to-point communication on the side because we don't have a degree of comfort with this new integrated system. So planning for upgrades and enhancements, wow, perfect. Yeah, you guys are right on target. So let's get into policy just a little bit. Policy of needs analysis. FAA needs to describe needs very, very clearly and put them in writing. Absent, of course, some kind of special or emergency circumstances where you have to act very, very quickly. Service organizations should describe minimum requirements and the goals for whatever service or product we're trying to get. This applies to all FAA procurements and agreements except for real property and utilities. So the purpose of analyzing the market is to first initiate industry involvement, get their direction on what we're trying to do or what we're trying to achieve, develop and refine our procurement strategy with industry input and knowledge of the market, obtain price information, find out if something is commercially available so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, decide what the level of competition is. How many vendors are out there capable of providing this information? So how much competition can we reasonably expect? what are the current market practices, and get feedback and comments on our requirements from the industry. Sometimes a little bit of tweaking can help save a lot of headaches or even reduce prices considerably. So initial research starts with identifying the types of information that's needed. I said availability of commercial and non-developmental items, commercial practices, available sources, practices and trends in the procurement for similar items in a given marketplace, the magnitude and degree of formality of a market analysis. It should be proportionate to the procurement that's being undertaken. In other words, if it's something real simple, low dollar, you don't need to go overboard in a market analysis. But if it's a big dollar item, especially if there's a certain amount of risk, technical or market risk associated with it, probably need to spend more time and be a little bit more formal and well documented in the development of a market analysis. The product of a needs analysis, what a department or program office produces as part of a need analysis, generically referred to as a product description. Whether it's a service or product, that's generically called a product description. It's also the generic term for a specification if it's a product that we're developing. So the program office or officials or the program manager prepares a product description. It should be accurate and clear, concise, reflect the minimum needs. Shouldn't be too restrictive with needs that aren't going to differentiate from different suppliers. It should have some kind of a measurable delivery performance objective or output, something that we can track progress against. It should, if at all possible, encourage the use of commercially available items. Of course, FAA is always interested in something that's environmentally friendly, efficiently produces the product or service, eliminates hazardous materials or hazardous waste. There is a movement within the FAA to try to encourage metric measurements, or at least dual metric and English. If you've worked at all in metric units, you know it's a terrific advantage. It's almost like the Europeans are cheating. It's so much easier to do calculations and quick sort of rough order of magnitude, doesn't make sense sort of calculations in your head using metric as opposed to applying English units and English systems. And finally, are there voluntary standards? In other words, marketplace or non-governmental agency standards that are available that we could adopt as the FAA that the industry has already adopted and applied. So what are some of the characteristics of effective requirements documents? They need to be produced in such a way that it promotes full and open competition. Only include restrictive provisions or conditions to the extent necessary to satisfy the needs of the agency. Put the requirements in terms of functions to be performed, performance required, or physical characteristics, if at all possible, rather than specifying a design specification, how to do it. Define the requirements in terms that enable and encourage the vendors to supply commercial items. And a technical description a lot of times is the key to a good requirements document. Program official prepares a technical description of the requirement, and it becomes part of the procurement request package. Technical description defines valid minimum needs. It is, again, not written in a way that restricts competition. It includes a statement of work or a specification, sometimes of drawings or other type of description, in order to avoid any kind of misinterpretation of the FAA needs and requirements. For supplies and equipment, again, I emphasize this over and over again, it should be commercially available. Avoid any kind of special manufacture that might restrict competition. And this way we get a broad competitive base. And with competition, the invisible hand of capitalism steps in and gives us the best possible value for our effort. So what are some categories of requirements that end up in a requirements documentation? What are some of the things categories of requirements you might expect to see? Key performance indicators, technical requirements, functional requirements. Excellent. Yeah. Bonnie says the function that you want to achieve from whatever you're trying to procure. That's true. Preliminary requirements documents, a lot of time to get early input. You issue draft or preliminary requirements, give the industry an opportunity to respond. Software specifications, deliverables, especially if it's a service, you want to know exactly what the deliverables are. Security, yeah, increasingly so. How many times a day do you get these phishing attacks in your email? And they're getting really creative. Innovation, so don't be overly restrictive. So you can encourage some form of innovation on the part of the vendors. All really, really good. So they need to be clear, fulfill the need, plain language, and not unnecessarily restrictive. Broad enough in scope that you cover all the different aspects of the needs that we mentioned here, but not so restrictive that you're going to limit competition. We have another breakout session coming up. This is on page 34 of your student guide, and I'm going to put you into your breakout rooms for about 20 minutes. You're going to work with your teams to evaluate a swim product description that's provided on page, what page did I say that was? On page 34 of your student guide. Determine whether the current product description aligns with the criteria for an effective product description. And if it doesn't, make changes and then put notes as to why you made those changes. In other words, I want you to make changes necessary to come up with an effective product description. Then put that information into the notes section. You're going to have to clear the notes section first. Put that information into the notes section, and then when your group is finished, copy the note section and paste it into the Word document that we talked about. So everybody has it available. So I said this is on page 34. I'm going to go to the breakout room. This is where we're going to be when we get back, and I'll put the instructions for this exercise right here. So they'll be in the breakout instructions section of your breakout room. Are there any questions before I put you in there for 20 minutes? Okay, starting breakout room right now. Okay, welcome back. I'm going to mute everybody's microphone real quick, and then turn mine back on. What did you think about the SWIM, the current product description, the SWIM document maintenance database? Tell me in your words, where and how did you find it lacking or insufficient? Okay. Martina says a little vague. Yeah, at times very vague. You think about something that important that you only have one paragraph describing it, confusing and non-descriptive. I would agree with that. Yvonne or Dan, have you got your hand up?
No.
Okay. Yvonne?
No, I don't have my hand up either.
No.
Okay,
just-
that's fine. I do that all the time too. I hit that hand by accident. What other? Somebody unmute your microphone and give me specific feedback.
There were no measurable objectives.
Yeah. How do we know if we're making progress toward the goal if there's nothing to measure? That's a real good point. Missing key elements. Go ahead.
I think our group as a whole in Breakout 2, it just doesn't say, it really doesn't say what you want, right? It does. You want a database, okay, and I want you to perform some work on some document maintenance. That's it. There's no specifics to the type of database, the menu on the front end, for example, the size. You know, I could give you anything. You could get a contractor that sits at home and pounds out something to Microsoft Access and turns it in and says, here you go for $1 million, you know?
I would hope to get that contract. Yeah, you're right. It's pretty lacking. Have no idea who's going to use it, how they're going to use it, what the user interface needs to look like, what kind of options they might need. So yeah, very indescript. By the way, group 2, you guys work really fast. You guys, as a group, you tend to pound this thing out in a big hurry, and then you wait for the other groups to catch up. So I'm very impressed with the speed of your performance. But I think, let's see, what else do we have? Surprised they don't already have something in place. Yeah, that is surprising. Not enough details covered. So in general, I think everybody's pretty consistently of the opinion is just flat out lacking. There's not enough. If anything, give a contract to somebody to do a good requirements definition, because whoever created that one really just scratched the surface. So there's a lot more that needs to go into. Somebody mentioned maintenance of the software. Yeah, what's the ongoing maintenance of that database supposed to look like? Are there any voluntary software standards for database backup, redundancy, cloud storage, robustness, data security? Is there something that should be referenced along with this thing? You're right, across the board, it wouldn't get you far if this was your requirements definition. It wouldn't get you far in terms of getting you to the kind of actual product or actual needs solution that you were looking for. So good job. Let's get back to this. Okay, it's about 10 till 2. I'm going to talk for about another 10 minutes, and then we'll take another 10-minute break at the top of the hour. Let's talk about the types of specifications. Specification can describe the physical, functional, or performance requirements of a material, product, system, data, service. But it needs some kind of criteria. It was like what we saw was missing in the SWIM product description, some kind of criteria for determining whether or not the requirements are actually being met. Specification may be coupled with a statement of work. So it describes the kind of work you want, as well as what it is that the deliverable is supposed to do. Types of specification, there are certain categories. Performance specification describes generally fit, form, and function, interface, interoperability requirements. That kind of specification, performance specification, is generally preferred by the FAA. A design specification describes in terms of detailed form, composition, specific materials, dimensions, design concepts, drawings, manufacturing processes. It requires a product to meet all aspects of the design requirements, and vendors can't substitute their own designs or their own preference for certain aspects of it. And then there's a hybrid, which is somewhere between the two, aspects of both. Let me ask this. Why is a performance specification preferred for a technical specification over a design specification? Any thoughts?
I think it's because it tells you, what the performance, the outcome of the performance that you want, and not to tell you specifically how to do it. You don't want to tell them how to design. You want them to come innovative and show you, the different options on the design, right?
You're absolutely right. You don't want to tell them how to do it, okay? And Bonnie mentioned the liability is on the contractor, right? If you give them and say, here is the design, the FAA is assuming the liability for that design. But if you give them the performance requirements and they design it, then the liability for that design is on the part of the contractor. Government specifies and it doesn't work. Yep, Bonnie, I think you hit it on the head. If government specifies everything about the design and it doesn't work, it's the government's fault. The contractor can say, look, we did exactly what you told us to do, and it didn't work, so it's your design. So you don't want to take the contractor out of that liability. Very good. Standards are established. There's industry standards, there's government standards. They establish some uniform engineering or technical requirement. It applies to items, materials, processes, methods, designs, engineering practices. A lot of industries have acceptable standards of practice. It's good to reference. Voluntary standards, we tend to call them, if it's not a government requirement, but an industry requirement. It achieves with standards the highest degree of uniformity. It ensures that materials and products are interchangeable if they all adhere to the same standards. I said voluntary standards are non-government standards, private sector. They're available for public use. That doesn't include standards for individual firms. Some individual firms have their own standards. When I say voluntary standards, I mean more industry-wide standards. So product descriptions citing standards and specifications should identify the number, title, approval date, and revision number of the standard. Why? Why is that required? Why approval date and revision number?
So you make sure that they're meeting the standards that and specs that you intend them to.
Yeah, if we're working to one standard and they're working off revision 3 and we're working off revision 2, we could be measuring to a different standard than what the vendor thought they were supposed to deliver to. So make sure that we're all on the same page. We have said numerous times we should try to use commercial products whenever possible. It supports all kinds of things: best price, easy maintenance, spare parts, interchangeability of products across different vendors. So a product description that describes voluntary commercial standards or use commercial item descriptions is preferred. Also, you enjoy, along with everything else, shorter delivery lead times. So there's just a whole host of benefits. If something's already out there and developed and standard across the industry, let's use it. Save us a lot of time and headache, and in the long run, save us a lot of money. Brand name descriptions identify specific product brand names, models, catalog numbers, even sometimes the name of the manufacturer. It's okay. The FAA has a lot of leeway in using that when it's in the FAA's best interest, but you need to make sure that you document that it's in FAA's best interest to specify a specific brand name. A lot of times we'll use the specification brand name or equal as part of the description. And so it's important to include not only the brand name, but also the description, the physical, functional, or performance characteristics of that brand that need to be met if a vendor comes up with something equal that's not the specific brand that we cited. Anybody have any examples of brand names that have been used in FAA procurements? What about a situation where brand name as a product description would not be appropriate? Any thoughts? Okay, that's a good one. Brand names from China that are prohibited. Durr said training for specific equipment. Okay, so that's a time where you would use a brand name. If we have Modicon processors installed, you want somebody to put together training on how to use Modicon processors, as an example. HVAC, of course. Okay, all really, really good examples. The Chinese example is really interesting. I have a friend of mine that installs security equipment, and I forget the name of the product. I've got a couple of, what's it called? Dericam. He gets these things from China, and then he goes into the source code, and he said every one of them has Chinese spy algorithm in there that captures data off your camera and sends it off to a website in China. And so he goes in first and removes that section of the firmware and then puts it back into the camera without it. So you got to be careful. Kohler engine generators. Okay, if you're specifying a specific generator, there might be one that's appropriate. That's Caterpillar or something else. So Kohler engine or equivalent might be a good way to categorize that. Okay, good discussion. Thank you. Certain copiers, yeah, another very, very good discussion. It is 2:00 on the East Coast. Those of you on the East Coast, we're going to take another 10-minute break, and let's meet back here at 10 after 2. I'll put you back into the lobby with a timer, and as always, I'll hang around for a couple minutes in case you have any questions. So I'll see you in 10 minutes. Okay, welcome back. We just finished talking a little bit about brand names. Make sure everybody made it back okay. If we're back here ready to go, give me a green thumbs up. Make sure I have a quorum. Also, as we noticed, I need to make sure people can hear me because we've had some system drops on some things. So if you can hear me and we're ready to go forward, give me a green thumbs up. And it looks like we've got plenty of green thumbs up. Let's go on to talk about the statement of work. It describes the objectives, purpose, and requirements of the work to be accomplished. Statement of work should state what work needs to be done and avoid defining how to perform the work. Again, just like specification, stick to performance specification, avoid design specification. In the same way, if we say what work is and not exactly how they need to perform that, let the marketplace find its own solution. The degree of specificity, again, depends on the type and size of the project. Who has responsibility for writing a statement of work? Who in your organizations has responsibility for writing a statement of work? Okay, the requirements owner, the PMO, project office, program office, yeah, across the board. Generally, the program office or project office then works with the source evaluation team. We'll draft it for the CO. PMO, it takes a, thank you, Bonnie, it takes a village. It does. Done correctly. There's so many people involved in most procurements and so many people impacted by most procurements that the best ones cast a broad net in terms of stakeholders. Contract team, all good answers. Who then has responsibility for reviewing the statement of work? Okay, PM. You know, if the program manager gives the needs to the source evaluation team or procurement team, and they put together a draft statement of work, it goes back to the program office to review and make sure that it's okay. PM who funds it, yeah, we'll reserve it. Sometimes the core will review it before passing on to the CO. Who then approves the statement of work for a procurement action? Okay, Bonnie, it's reviewed by different groups for different things, but who in your organization approves a statement of work before it goes out? It's CO. Very often it's the CO is the final approval. The product owner, I would hope the CO will work very closely with the program office and the product owner. Legal, very often. Legal, especially if it's a certain size, it requires legal to look at it. All right, very good. So the 4 W's of a statement of work is who, what, when, and where. We should touch on all of them to define clearly what the expected outputs, deliverables, objectives, how it's going to be measured, where and when, what work do they need to do, when does it to be performed, who should perform the work, and where must the work be performed. Some additional considerations when writing a statement of work is avoid redundancy. Should be written very clear and concisely. Active versus passive voice. Do you understand what I mean when I say that? Passive voice is like the computer servers will be maintained regularly by the contractor. That's passive voice because the subject is the computer servers that aren't really doing the work. We should say instead, the contractor will maintain the computer servers. Okay, so the contractor is the subject, and that's active voice. Clarify any abbreviations. Any government industry is usually guilty of using an excessive number of abbreviations. Make sure to use words like must and will to define exactly what you want them to do. And avoid pronouns. You can reference something about the contractor and later say they. And if it gets into some kind of discrepancy, they could say, well, we're not sure who you were referring to when you use the word they. So even though it might sound redundant, the only thing worse than being redundant is being not clear. So avoid using pronouns if at all possible. So the contents should be tailored to the need. Some of the sections that a statement of work might include would be number one, overview, set the stage, understand the requirement, personnel restrictions or requirements, backgrounds, capabilities, certifications, quality control requirements, definitions of specific terms. Sometimes there's a definitions section, government furnished property, services, or information, contractor furnished items, specific work or tasks to be performed, technical orders, specifications, regulations, manuals, delivery requirements, packaging or packing and marking sometimes for packaging, technical exhibits. They might all be part of a statement of work. Statement of objectives describes the basic or the top level results that are to be achieved. It provides vendors a little bit more flexibility in the provision of a solution or their proposal of a solution, allows them to be innovative in their approach. So source evaluation teams should use a statement of objectives to obtain a lot of times a detailed vendor supplied statement of work. The statement of objectives, by the way, does not become a part of the contract. When the vendor says this is how we're going to do it, the vendor commitment to their statement of work then becomes part of the contract. They're saying we're going to hold you to this. So SOO, statement of objectives, includes the purpose, the scope, the time and the place, background, the performance objectives, the required results, and any operating constraints. So how does a statement of objectives differ from a statement of work? Anybody?
Doesn't include performance tasks.
Yeah, does not include specific tasks. These are the outcomes that I want. And you tell me how we're going to get there, which makes sense because even when I specify performance tasks, I don't want the tasks. That's the deliverable. Sure, I do, but that's not ultimately the objective, is the benefit that I accrue and enjoy as a result of those tasks. So a statement of objectives saying we're going to achieve these benefits. Now you tell me how. And it gives me an opportunity to evaluate different approaches. Which vendor came up with the best approach. Great. So I've got another breakout session, identifying this time vendor requirements. This is on page, I'm going to say this, it's on page 42. That's the page number at the bottom of the page. But if you're using the PDF document that's part of the course files download, the PDF is, I'm not sure how many pages. The numbering on the PDF started early. So the actual student guide page numbers started a little bit later. So even the page at the number at the bottom of the page should say 42. The PDF document might be a different page. I'm going to put you in your breakout documents for this time 40 minutes. 40 minutes. That'll take us right up to the next break. Let's look at the requirements for this one. We've got a number of system engineering and business support services, SOWs, that are provided by bidders. We want you to work with your team to answer questions in the assignment. Determine, is the question answered in the statement of work? If so, where is the question answered and what changes would you make? So the questions are, what work will the contract do? When is the work to be performed? Who should perform the work? And where must the work be performed? The 4 W's. So are those 4 questions answered in the statement of work? If so, where is it answered? and what changes would you make? Okay. Record the results again in the notes section of your breakout room. After the notes section is complete, everybody copy and paste it into the Word document that you have on your computer and select somebody to report back. I'll be monitoring the breakout room notes. And any questions before I put you into your breakout rooms?
Sorry, say it again. Which page is the statement of work?
Yep, it'll be in the description. It's on page 42. Let's see.
And what did you say the questions are that we need to answer?
What, when, who, and where. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy the instructions, just like I did last time, and I'm going to put them right here. So they're in the breakout room instructions section of your break room. So you'll always be able to see those instructions. The SOWs that are provided by vendors start on page 42 of your student guide. Read the SOW, but in the back of your head, keep in mind, is it answering the question, what work are they going to do? When are they going to do the work? Who should perform the work? And where should the work be performed? Any questions now? Okay, I'm going to start the breakout session and then I'll set a timer for 40 minutes.
because it says that somebody say something?
Hey, welcome back. You can mute your microphones and turn mine on. Let's talk a little bit about the statement of work in the swim description. We'll finish this discussion and then we'll take our next 10-minute break. Was this in your opinion, an adequate statement of work? Or do you think there were deficiencies? No. Okay. Very clear. That was quick. No, nobody thought that was very well written at all. I don't think it would, we'd hit the mark if that was our statement of work and we're trying to get support from a vendor. What would you specifically change? What are the things that are missing in there? Very, very vague. Matthew, right on target. It's kind of like a high school paper instead of any kind of well-researched document. Level of effort, definitely zero or not much. So specific. Okay, Eric says key personnel. What about the key personnel?
Aren't any listed at all.
There aren't any listed. There's no key personnel or requirements or certifications or capabilities or background, education, experience, nothing, okay? So if I was a vendor fulfilling this, I'd go get a high school student for $12 an hour and put them out there, keep my costs down and my profits up. If that's all I need. That's a good one. What else? Place of performance. Did it say anything about the place, where it's supposed to be performed? Equivalent job description. Didn't have a very good description of exactly what he wanted to do. Kind of vague, high level, but left a lot to be desired. I would agree with that. How often the different reports were needed? Nothing there. How is a vendor supposed to estimate their costs? Let's say this was supposed to be a fixed price contract. How are they supposed to estimate their costs with that amount of ambiguity? William lost internet connection. Okay. Oh, we've got a few people lost internet connection.
Yeah, me too. We just got back. Sorry. I just tried to figure out what happened.
No, that's fine. We were just talking about the inadequacy of this statement of work for actually getting any kind of a reliable bid from a vendor. So who's needed? How many people attending these meetings? You know, is it a big forum, or there's going to be 30 or 40 attendees, or is it going to be a small group of people? No estimated amount of hours, so there's no maximum amount of time to estimate for a vendor.
But there also wasn't anything mentioned about working from home with this day and age. You know, we're in and out of the office, so there was nothing said about if the employees could work from home or would be able to work from home, or Zoom meetings, or what equipment would be secure enough for them to attend these meetings if they were, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. And increasingly, stuff like this is done remotely. It did mention a little bit of a need for travel, but is that an absolute requirement? Do you have to be physically there for every meeting? Can you listen in on a wire and still provide the meeting minutes and distribute them? Probably. I would assume it saved everybody a lot of money, and probably the product would be very close to the same if somebody was there in person. What else would we need to include in this statement of work? Government furnished equipment. Are we going to provide computers access? Are we going to get a nice FAA computer with a Pulse Secure link to make sure all our documents and communications are secured? Clearances, PIV requirements. Yeah, we all went through that. We all, you know, I'm a contractor. I had to go through that requirements. That's not in here anywhere. That's a very, very good point.
And when we specify there, like labor categories, And you also put the level of clearance that you want. If the contractor's going to need PIVs, if they're not, not everybody needs it, right? And key personnel may, and then like regular PMs that oversee the contract typically don't have access to everything the FAA does, but just a direct support. So that's nothing. There's no table there specifying anything.
Nothing addresses security or clearance requirements. That's a good point. Maria mentioned, they're creating this database and sending out these documents, but there's nothing about maintaining or security or updating or configuration control. So there's a lot of stuff that's missing. At best, the statement of work provides a high-level outline, but it definitely needs to be fleshed out. There's all kinds of detail. If I was, again, put your mind in the position of a contractor, would you be able to put dollars to this quote? I mean, to the statement of work? The answer is probably not, because you don't really, it's difficult to understand what it is you're going to be doing. So process and procedures in assessing the documents, open, vague, indescript. It's a balance. You don't want to be so descriptive that the vendor can't be a little bit creative in providing a solution, but you don't want to be so vague that anything will fulfill the requirements of the SOW. So this one definitely errs on the side of being way too vague. Very, very good. All right. Hey, we're up against our next break. I'm going to send you to the lobby and put a timer up for 10 minutes. It is, looks like 3 minutes after 3 o'clock in New York. So this we'll be back here at 13 minutes after 3. So I'll stick around and listen in case there's any questions. Otherwise, I'll start the lobby timer. Okay, welcome back. We're about to continue our discussion with independent cost estimates. But first, some people are already ahead of me on this one. If we're ready to move forward, why don't you give me a green thumbs up that you're ready to go? Looks like we're good. Okay, independent government cost estimate describe how much the FAA can reasonably expect to pay for some supplies or services. It's supported by data and it's documented, sometimes factual, catalog price, here it is, sometimes reasoned, interpolation, extrapolation, or just based on experience. In any organization that produces products or designs and builds products, the people who do cost estimation are always golden. It's a special talent, and it tends to be very industry specific. So the IGCE serves as the basis for reserving funds for a given procurement. It's a method for comparing costs proposed by different offerers, and it becomes an objective basis for determining the reasonableness of a price once you receive a solicitation from a vendor. Excuse me. They're required for any anticipated procurement, including contract modifications, whose estimated value is $100,000 or more, except if it's the modifications part of an existing price option. In other words, the cost of the modification was already projected. You had a change clause in your contract that incorporated those costs. Then, in that which case, it's considered an ancillary cost. It's already there. Excuse me, antecedent cost. It was already there and existed at the time that the original contract was made. It's also not required on delivery orders under an indefinite delivery contract, so an umbrella contract that covers, and you're just doing releases against an umbrella contract. It's also not required for real estate, for real property. And by the way, even though the $100,000 is the threshold for requiring an independent government cost estimate, the CO at any time can decide on their own if they want to get an independent government cost estimate for a procurement action that's less than $100,000. So how would, if you were running the SWIM program and you were the CO, how would you go about getting an independent government cost estimate for the SWIM program scenario? Try to be specific on this. Any ideas?
I look for similar programs or requirements from other programs and past contracts.
Sure, something very similar. If you can extrapolate off of something that's already been done, that's an easy way to get to a cost estimate based on historical data. That's a good way to approach it. See if there's a vendor or a contractor, a consultant even, that's not bidding on this contract. They could come up with a cost estimate. Might be another approach. Of course, the benefit for something like the SWIM program should be very, very clear. It sets your expectations on what you can expect. And up front, you're going to budget for this money. It's required by law as part of your appropriation funds that you set this money aside. So make sure you're not going to go in excess of your appropriated funds. And you reserve those funds ahead of time for what you anticipate the costs are going to be at the time that you have the need. Okay. Refer to what was done in SWIM, similar programs based on Section B. Good. GSA. Yeah, very often GSA is really good. You do such a broad spectrum of supplies and services for the government that they very often have the expertise needed to come up with a good cost estimate. If the KTR couldn't bind it, how could the cost estimate team? I'm not sure. Matthew, you want to explain what you meant by that?
I'm saying there's not enough information there. As the statement of work is right now, I don't believe the contractor could bid it. I certainly don't believe the cost estimate team could properly come up with an estimate.
Yeah, you'd get a huge range if they did work on a range. That's a very good point. As it is, it's clear the statement of work that you saw in the last exercise is not adequate for any kind of cost estimate basis. Okay, LCAT rates, very good, dictated on salary.com. That's a good way to do it. There's a lot of different ways to do it. A lot of times it's manpower times salary rate plus overhead or benefits. It can actually be a fairly simple equation. But the hard part is you have to be able to estimate manpower up front, and you cannot do that if you don't have a good statement of work description. So the program official, or the core, prepares the procurement request package. The nature, the value, the complexity of the requirement will determine the extent of the package. For example, information needed for a single source contract modification would differ wildly from something for a systems development that's going to be competitively procured. Program office should consult with the CO, determine the kind of information that's needed for an acceptable procurement request package, and when that information needs to be provided to get the procurement out in time. The PR, it provides the contracting officer with information and approvals that are necessary. It initiates the whole procurement when the procurement request is received. So if there are any major deficiencies or omissions, as an example, the statement of work that we just looked at in our last breakout exercise, the CO should not accept the procurement request. Instead, we should try to obtain any missing information or send it back to the creators of the document, program office or the core, to try to get the missing information to help fill it out. So if the CO goes forward with a defective PR, it's going to lead to all kinds of problems, potentially have to cancel the procurement because not proper approvals or lack of funds, failure to get a cost-effective quantity, failure to include price-related evaluation factors. There's all kinds of things, bad things that'll happen if your procurement request is not complete. So I said the procurement request, it initiates the acquisition, supplies, equipment, utilities, real property, really everything. It's used by the contracting officer to plan, solicit, and award a contract, purchase order, delivery task order, agreement, lease, whatever the target is for the procuring department. It defines the requester's requirements so the CO can acquire them through either government agencies, private public organizations, commercial vendors. The procurement toolbox provides additional detail in the required contents of a PR package, depending upon the type of procurement. But the PR package is the basis for a requisition of committing the funds. It should have a statement of work, so specification, purchase description, drawing, something like that, or a technical description of the requirement. Any kind of technical data items, such as software design documents or test plans or any kind of deliverable. Contract data requirements should be included. If available or if required, depending on the dollar value, an independent government cost estimate should be included. List of potential vendors, delivery location and delivery date, method of inspection and acceptance of any deliverable, any government furnished property or information, testing requirements, federal standards, security requirements. It's something that came up in a lot of your comments, should be included in the purchase requisition. Risk and sensitivity level determination, if necessary. There's a whole form associated with that. Classified information handling requirements, any kind of literature or product samples, if it's a commercial item. If it's a brand name, it'd be specific, or brand name and equivalent. Warranty requirements, liquidated damages if it's a performance with a due date. Possibly requirements for value engineering if your government is looking for opportunities to save money. Privacy Act compliance determination, Section 508, if there's a need for a determination of handicap availability. Need for spare parts, repair parts list, patent or copyright, any kind of bonding requirements for performance. It comes up a lot of times when you're doing construction. Insurance coverage, labor categories and minimum qualifications for those labor categories. That's something somebody mentioned a little bit earlier. Could also be a part of the procurement request. The program official with the requirement to be satisfied through the procurement action is the one who prepares the PR package generally. And this is generally done in PRISM, or the FAA's automated requisitioning and purchasing system. Contracting officials are not allowed to accept manual procurement requests or paper requests. Everything now is done as part of the, what's that act? I don't want to, Paper Saving Act or something. I can't remember the name of it, but most things are done electronically now. So the requisition provides basic information, appropriation data, item description, place of performance, quantity, dollars. It's also the method for reserving funds, as I mentioned. The contracting officer then accepts or rejects a procurement request. The program official prepares the package, furnishes evidence of clearances, approvals, justification, coordinates with the CO ideally, so there's no surprises on the part of the CO when the information gets there. Some funds certifier verifies that the funds are reserved and certified as available. Sometimes if it's a physical parts, logistics center supply support might include program requirements for using a logistics inventory system from the FAA Logistics Center. There can be, if it's real estate or utilities branch or facilities management staff will get involved if it's some sort of real estate, if they're the primary contracting offices. But only designated FAA employees can approve a requisition. So the approval levels are tied to the total estimated amount of the requisition. Chief Information Officer has to review and approve any proposed procurement action for information technology or IT services that exceed $250,000 or would result in a new or modified contract or order or some new or modified agreement. This includes interagency and intra-agency agreements. And the goal of this IT review is to make sure the FAA flight plan is addressed, prevent any kind of redundancies, make sure there's compatible resources and that it all works well with the existing or legacy enterprise architecture. Make sure that the IT resources support FAA existing business processes, system security, savings or efficiency. IT is one of those things when you add an IT component, there's usually so many connections to legacy systems that are involved that it takes a lot of effort, a lot of testing, redundant testing to make sure that system plugs in and plays the way it's supposed to. So there's a specific form within the FAA. Anybody ever worked with an AIT-3 form? It's for CIO approval. You submit the form along with the statement of work, cost or price information, and some documentation of market research. Chief Financial Officer has approval of authority for anything that's proposed exceeding $10 million or more. There's a federal CFO Act of 1990. It says that all federal agencies have to provide annual financial statements, just like the SEC requires of private companies. The OMB, the Office of Management Budget, requires of federal agencies every year ever since 1990. So in order to generate the information needed for these financial statements, a service organization has to establish a proper contract line item structure and a billing mechanism for any contracts that they're overseeing. So this information can flow up to the FAA's Chief Financial Officer. The Joint Resources Council approves the FAA investment portfolio in major programs. There's an acquisition executive board that you may be familiar with, reviews and authorizes and oversees development and implementation of acquisition management policy, processes, practices, procedures, and tools, the stuff that we're talking about in this class. There's an acquisition system advisory group that supports the acquisition executive board. There's an acquisition strategy review board that supports any services expected to have a total value greater than $5 million. There's a capital investment team that reviews investment initiatives and provides findings to the Joint Resources Council before investment decisions are made. So there's a lot of structure and approval in place for FAA, especially in investment decisions. Which brings me back to my swim question while we're swimming along. Will the procurement for the swim system require review by the CIO, the Chief Information Officer of the FAA? Any thoughts? Well, it's not 15 million. Yeah, I know the comment. I know what Eric's thinking. We can't really say until we have a better statement of work. So that's probably true. That's probably true too.
Now, I was talking about the STFO. I think the threshold went above to, I don't know, like last year or lately to not 10 million, but up to not need for CFO if it's less than 15 million. I think there was an order or something. Okay. Try to find it so I can,
Okay.
But it was a recent update.
Well, the CIO involvement, the CFO approval is big dollars.
Right.
The CIO approval is only $250,000 only. I wish I had a $250,000 contract, but the CIO approval, anything up to $250,000, and the good chance looking at the SWIM program and as integrated as it is, I'm sure it's more than $250,000. So even though the statement of work is still vague, there's a good chance that whatever they come up with in the SWIM procurement, it's going to require the Chief Information Officer to review it. And again, part of her or his review is to make sure that it doesn't contradict with existing systems. Software and IT systems, one of these things that, if everybody's kind of doing their own thing, you end up with a mess because nobody talks to each other. Yeah. Eric said my independent government cost estimate would be high enough. I agree. What other authority might review the SWIM program? Again, it depends on the dollar amount. It's not a big, probably not joint resources. It's not a major program. possibly strategic acquisition strategic review board, because it might be approaching 5 million. Probably not capital investment team, because it's not a capital investment. So a lot of it depends on the dollar amount, but definitely the CIO. I think we'd all be in agreement on that one. So the next step in acquisition planning is the extent of competition and steps to take to ensure a good competition. I said that it's an important part of planning is assessing what kind of competition is suitable for a given procurement action. Why have we said it's important for the FAA to determine the extent of competition for any given procurement? Why would you take the time to do the market research, find out how much competition is out there and available, and decide how much you want to try to solicit? Any thoughts? I've got a couple people typing. You know how many capable and updates in the industry? Okay. Get an idea amount of bids. Okay. That's a good idea. Diversity of proposals and capabilities out there. Okay. 100%. Also, ID available technology. Yeah, some of the pre-release of plans or procurement documents might lead to some new opportunities or new technology. Good. Small business is always a priority. So if you understand the competition that's out there and how it's structured, you might find an opportunity to carve out part of this procurement to involve a small business. Very good. So how does the FAA determine the extent of competition? Examining sources, talk specifically with the small business program to find out the available suppliers in a given area, a market area. Take a look at the competitive requirements. Take a look at unsolicited proposals. So the primary question when you're looking at the extent of competition is, will competition be required to satisfy the need? Can an order to be placed with another agency or from an existing source list? Are there any special standards of responsibility that may apply? And what level of appropriation is appropriate? Again, it's a function of to what extent is it standard versus will it be developed? If it's standard off-the-shelf stuff, then, the more competition is all the better. So if you were to put competition on a continuum from high to low, generally you put one side commercial and simplified source selection, and the other side is highly competitive source selection. Commercial and simplified would be on the high competitive end. The non-commercial complex developmental source selection would tend to be on the low competitive side. So commercial and simplified tends to be more of a transactional consideration, whereas non-commercial and complex, it's more of a partnering consideration, because you're going to be working with these suppliers as it's developed and maintained over time, because it's something unique to the FAA. So determining the methods of maintaining competition throughout the life cycle, consider dual or multi-sourcing, obtaining re-procurement data and data rights. In other words, they develop something, if you have rights and access to it, we can go back out on the market, re-procure and rebid for something. Whereas if it's a proprietary system supplied by a supplier, we have to find somebody to create it again from the ground up. So in other words, if we pay for development, then we at the FAA own it, and we can rebid the refinement of something that we already own. Open systems design is always an avenue to maximize competition, or any other appropriate method. Every market is a little different. Every approach a little different. Every procurement action requires a slightly different level. How would you determine the extent of competition in the SWIM program? How do some of the policy sections that we talked about earlier, determine the extent of competition in the SWIM program? Any thoughts on that? Okay, Maria says full and open competition. After we clean up the inadequacies in our statement of work, it might be open to full and open competition. A little bit of market research. Has anybody else done that before? Is anybody else out there before? It could be as simple as a market survey. We're going to talk a little bit more about market research coming up. SAM.gov, previous similar contracts, always a good source. If two or more small businesses are capable, you might even be able to stitch together some kind of a joint venture, multiple small businesses to provide the entire contract. RFI is always a good way. Get information from vendors, find out what kind of capabilities are out there and available, and then do successive requests for information as part of an extended screening exercise. Industry Day. Eric, that's a great idea. That's always enjoyable. I mean, you can get so much more information talking to firms and get a feel for what they're about, doing this face-to-face. Set up an industry day, invite them to come on in and tell us what they're capable of and what they want to do. Share verbally. This is kind of what our idea is. What do you think? You're in the industry. What's out there? What's cutting edge? What are some of the best practices? It's a great opportunity to learn by listening face-to-face. Great idea. All right. You guys are good. You've obviously done this before. So the service organization determines whether the procurement should be conducted in a competitive or a single source basis. Single source always requires approval. Sometimes it's because it's an emergency situation and we don't have time to go out to the market, and so it's a quick approval. Other things might dictate the need for single source. Commercial and simplified source selection for commercial items that have been sold through established catalog or market prices, usually on a fixed price basis. Complex non-commercial, complex large dollar items that require some sort of design and development before they're ready for delivery. Full and open, any qualified vendor can participate. Limited is you do some sort of pre-selection or have a qualified vendor list up front. It saves a lot of headaches. If it's a really broad procurement, you don't have to go through a lot of unqualified vendor submittals before you get to the people who are really capable. If you have a qualified vendor list up front. Agency-wide contracts should be used whenever possible. Matter of fact, your procurement plan should include a rationale if for some reason there's an item that's available on an agency-wide contract and you choose not to use it. You'll have to put a justification why you choose not to use that. It's, of course, important to use agency-wide contracts because that's seen as being the most cost-effective. Again, broader supply source, large numbers with volume comes price discounts. It just, generally, it makes sense. Small business development program. How does that apply in determining the extent of competition? The procurement team is responsible for FAA's small business development program. You'll find that's a little different if you work outside of the FAA. The FAR dictates that you work with the Small Business Administration, the SBA, whereas the FAA has the flexibility. We have our own internal small business development program, a small business development organization. Makes it a little easier because it's more suited and tailored and focused on FAA needs. But the program team should take all reasonable action to increase small business participation. Looking at possibly breaking out requirements to increase opportunities for small business. Consider how you can involve small business back in the planning phase. Get guidance from our internal FAA Small Business Development Program Office. I think their abbreviation is SBDPO. Some of you might have had experience with them, but sometimes they will help a procurement team put together a small business conference or some sort of outreach that's sponsored by the Small Business Development Program Office. Service team, they should coordinate with the SBDPO staff as soon as the requirements are estimated to be in excess of $100,000. As soon as you identify the need's going to go above $100,000, you should reach out to and start to work with the Small Business Development Office. Anybody have an experience working with the internal FAA Small Business Development Office? I hope you can't hear my dog barking. I think it's a small dog. I think he thought I was talking about Small Business Doggy Development Office. Maria, you've worked with Small Business Development Office. Elena, not directly, I see. It was a small business and we were on EFAST. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, EFAST also, says Jake. So Darcy, you're working with the Small Business Office right now. Okay, through EFAST. Well,
yeah, I'm not working there, but we're the strategy is actually we're using EFAST help to actually put our requirement there with EFAST. So, and probably going to we actually broke a large business in pieces, and that particular requirement is going to small business.
Okay, interesting. Good, very smart. I've never worked with the FAA Small Business Development Office, but I've had my share of headaches working with the federal small business, with the SBA. So I imagine an internal FAA Small Business Development Office would be a lot more convenient, a lot more tailored to our needs internally. So the Small Business Development Program Office, some of the support that they offer includes workshops, procurement workshops, planning meetings, identify potential small businesses, source selection criteria to help design to be fair and consistent and encourage small business participation, advertising recommendations to reach out to and identify small businesses. They will respond to written or telephone inquiries from small businesses. They'll help you by reviewing final source lists, questions presented in conferences by small businesses or subcontracting plans. They'll ensure that qualified small businesses are entered into their database. They'll assist in proposal evaluations, on-site pre-award verifications, debriefings, post-award meetings, on-site compliance reviews. There's a lot of effort that goes into encouraging small business participation. Additionally, they can help with setting up prime contracts with small businesses, encouraging and designing and shaping or wording subcontracts for small businesses, bonding assistance and DOT lending program for small businesses, business declaration. Everybody has to go through that. Small businesses have to go through that business declaration to get approved, certified as a small or disadvantaged business. Contract bundling sometimes provides opportunities for small businesses. FAA has an established mentor-protege program that helps bring along smaller disadvantaged businesses. And of course, there's always the opportunity to encourage some kind of a joint venture. There is actually a small business program section as part of FAA procurement guidance document. The section paragraphs are actually referenced in your student guide. So other considerations on the extent of competition. Pre-release and documents is one way we've mentioned. Sometimes it can help with community and industry communication. So draft functional requirements, draft specifications, draft screening information. Make sure you have a big pounded draft on top so everybody realizes this is not final, but you can get some early feedback and industry direction for your procurement. Sometimes you can release the SIR early, also in draft form, to start to get industry feedback as part of the market analysis strategy. Public announcements help with industry involvement. Procurements above $100,000 have a requirement to be publicly announced. If the action does not exceed $100,000, it still is an option. The contracting officer might elect to still publicly announce. And all procurements, procurement of products from the federal prison industries, FPI, in excess of $10,000 have to be publicly announced. Anybody ever worked with FPI? Out of curiosity? Eric, you work with FPI. That's interesting. You know, it pops up, FPI pops up a lot in the AMS procurement system.
Yeah, it wasn't here. It was with DLA.
Okay. I've never had any experience. Could you give us just how was the work with the federal prison industries?
What I got was great. I was getting pallet racking for warehouses.
Okay.
And they've got a whole business out of it. They produce some of the best pallet racks in the industry.
Wow. Okay. So they actually have a steel fab shop doing pallet rack welding.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Impressive. Okay. Makes good sense. All right. We're moving on to source selection planning. I've got about 10 minutes until we take our next and final break. I'll give you an option. I can talk for 10 minutes and then we'll take our next and final break. Or if anybody's in dire need, we can take a final break now and then run for the entire hour until 5 o'clock Eastern. Any preference one way or the other? Okay. If nobody has a preference, then I'm geared up to talk. I'm wound up sufficiently to talk for 10 minutes. So I'll talk for 10 minutes. We'll talk about source selection planning. And when I get close to 4 o'clock, we'll take a break for 10 minutes at that point. So first, an overview. How to select the ultimate contractor is the next step in this process. Of course, a decision on how you're going to select has to be done before issuing the solicitation. Not only so that it ensures the integrity of your own selection methods, but also the contractors need to know how a decision is going to be made. That needs to be part of your procurement package that goes to contractors. So appropriate provisions and selection factors have to include number of awards, price-related factors, technical and business management evaluation factors, and overall weight of technical business management factors versus price factors. Some of the critical issues that arise is what factors should the contract specialist apply in selecting a competitive offer? What's the methods of procurement that best serve the government's needs? What are the milestones that will be tracked in the solicitation in evaluating the offers? Who is part of the source selection team? What roles, responsibilities, and milestones will be assigned to participants of the source selection team? So contracting personnel at the FAA, they need to strive for best value in negotiated acquisitions. Best value can be attained in a number of different ways. The relative importance of cost or price may vary in relation to the importance of technical considerations or past performance considerations. We talked earlier today about trade-offs. Trade-off is appropriate in weighing what's in the government's best interest to consider as an award other than the lowest price or the highest technical rating. The lowest price technically acceptable source selection process is a lot of times appropriate for when best value is expected. So you put together a list of technically acceptable proposals first, saying all these people are technically capable, they meet the technical requirements, and then you simply pick the lowest price from that short list. So there's a number of different methods to get there. We'll start with a quick question. I'll check my time. What do you have to do to plan source selection? What's entailed in planning the source selection? Okay, identify evaluation factors. Extremely important. ASRB, help me out, Jane. What is ASRB? Find a team, approved vendors, planning board, yes. Find a team who are going to work with you, always. What kind of skill set do you want as part of your evaluation team? How much diversity? What kind of stakeholder representation do you want in your evaluation team? Number of awards you're going to make. Is it going to be an umbrella contract with multiple releases? Is it going to be a given time with modifications? Technical expertise? What kind of options do you want to put as part of it? All good. All required as part. So you have to do a lot before you can plan your source selection. And Bonnie hit it on the nose. You need a documented evaluation plan. That becomes part of your screening information request, is what your evaluation plan is. What's the length of the contract? Okay, all very, very good. Let's see. So why is it important to plan how you're going to evaluate your offers? We're going to talk more about the screening information request in the next section. But the evaluation plan is prepared by the service organization, is approved by the SSO. It should be concise and tailored. Name of the SSO, the service organization members and evaluators, what the evaluation criteria is, what the evaluation method and process should be, the schedule, and any other information that's needed for source selection should all be included. It should be completed and approved prior to the receipt of the responses from any screening information request. It's not fair to get the screening information first and then come up with an evaluation criteria. And yes, Doris, good point. So non-disclosure agreements generally have to be signed for any kind of government released information, so it doesn't become out there in the public. And it has to be shared by your evaluation team. They have to sign some kind of confidentiality agreement as a prerequisite to serve on the evaluation team. So evaluation criteria, when you determine how you're going to evaluate the offers, help you, and how you're going to make the award is very, very important. The right contractor is hands down the most important decision that a service team is going to make. So evaluation criteria tells you how you're going to select the contractor. You get the wrong criteria, you're going to get the wrong contractor. So it becomes very, very important to get the right evaluation criteria. And it should be included in your evaluation plan as well as the solicitation document. So the vendors know how they're going to be graded. Focus should be on the discriminators that enables social election official to determine potential vendor best value. So if you're only, let's say, if you're only gathering vendors from a certain geographic area, then geographic consideration should not be part of your discriminator because they're all already qualified by the geographic location. So there's two general types, high-level generic types of evaluation criteria. There's assessment criteria that addresses the soundness of their approach and compliance with the requirements. Did they do what we asked them? Is their approach make sense? Okay. And then there's specific criteria. It's usually divided into a couple categories. There's specific technical requirements that have to be met, competence, shown experience in this area, whatever, cost and price criteria. And then there's specific business management criteria. Do they have a valid quality assurance plan, something like this? Evaluation criteria can also address things like logistics support. I mentioned quality assurance, facilities, subcontractors. Increasingly, the government is moving to performance-based contracting, where the needs are stated in terms of what is required rather than how to get there. It gives the contractors or the vendors a little bit of flexibility and gives them a chance to show off their individual approach and try to argue how that's beneficial or better for the FAA. Companies sometimes are selected on their ability to reduce cost, greater productivity, and with better performance. Anybody have examples of evaluation criteria that you've used in your procurements? Anything that I didn't touch on? Past performance, always. And I'll mention this. What is the only true predictor of future performance? Oh, Lena, you got it. Past performance. Always. When I interview people, I always ask them to give me examples of what you did in this kind of situation in the past. And the people are surprisingly honest. But if they're successful in the given situation in the past, they're going to be successful in a given situation in the future. So, oops, there we go. Technical criteria come from the program requirements document, and they address characteristics a solution has to provide to meet the required capability. Should also address risk, software, hardware, design, architecture. Cost and price information is evaluated to determine the cost of the FAA. But the FAA's part of the goal of the procurement program is to come up with something that's fair and reasonable cost. So the assessment needs to be, is it reasonable? Is it accurate? Is it complete? Answer this. How does cost or price information from a vendor determine completeness of a vendor's bid? Any thoughts? I'm going to jump back and mention Eric's your comment. No past performance isn't a disqualifier. In some cases, it's a good predictor of future. But let's say you're reaching out to small businesses. If past performance is always required, we'd never get small businesses online. But that's a good point. So addressing how does price information determine completeness? Linus says if the pricing aligns with the technical approach. Okay, so let's say you get a bunch of vendors, you go out and you solicit 12 vendors, and 11 of them are all between 1.1 and 1.3 million dollars, and here comes this one person in at 500,000. That one vendor, they missed it somehow. They didn't understand, or it's not complete. Doris says it's all about how the proposal is written. That's right. The example of our statement of work from previously, we're going to get a wide variance because the proposal, the statement of work was written so poorly. So you'll find well-written specification, well-written procurement action tends to get tightly clustered pricing. And when the pricing, for the most part, the bulk of the suppliers are tightly clustered, then the outliers, you know that they're doing something different. If its outlier is laying low on the price, you know, they missed some of the requirements. The outlier is high, you know, they misunderstood, or sometimes they don't have the capabilities to view it as a risk. So they're pricing the risk in with their solicitation, in with their bid rather. Yeah, Matthew, or they found a new innovative approach. So it might need to be looked at. Is it something that's really a benefit, even though it might cost a little bit more? Could it benefit the FAA in the long run? So business management information is evaluated like corporate experience, past performance, management, their ability to manage subcontractors, quality assurance. If it's required hardware or software, I'd want them to show me a good quality assurance plan. How are they going to go about assuring me that I'm getting the quality of deliverable that I desire to meet my need? The choice of evaluation criteria should focus on the important things to meet the need so that we can discriminate between vendors. Too many evaluation criteria can dilute the impact. It takes away from the importance. If usually there's not more than about, 4 to 6 really important drivers. KIPs sometimes are called KPIs rather, key performance indicators. So there's really 4 to 6 really drivers of the competitiveness of this thing. And so if you have 27 different submittal evaluation factors, it starts to dilute the really important factors. So too many will dilute the impact, but too few can also miss some of the important things and compromise the ability to discriminate. So evaluation criteria in summary forms the basis of evaluation, should not be modified without notifying offerers and give them a chance to revise their submittals. Should be tailored to the requirements. You should avoid including sub-criteria or overlapping criteria. What do I mean when I say sub-criteria? I mean, if you have an overall system and then you have a bunch of requirements on the subsystems, why is it important to avoid sub-criteria, do you think? Any thoughts? Creates confusion? Okay, it can. Too much sub-criteria. That's a good point. On my computer, I can see that people are typing, but it's just, I'm on pins and needles. Okay, could become restrictive. Explain sub-criteria again, Bonnie says. Could potentially create conflicts. Okay, let's say I've got an overall system requirement. It's supposed to produce this result. But then I go down, let's say it's a software package. And I'm supposed to be able to utilize it. Here's the user interface, here's the access. But then I go in and I define all the requirements for all the subsystems. Well, it should have a cloud-based documents, the depository that does this or that. It should do this or that. What happens if you define requirements at the subsystem level, you take the supplier out of the responsibility for the system integration. If you define all the subsystem requirements, then they say, hey, we met your subsystem requirements. It's not our fault that the whole thing doesn't work. So you need to try to make your requirements at the system level rather than the subsystem level, so the vendor is always responsible for the success of the system, the entire system integration effort. Okay, Bonnie, good deal. Hey, you know what? Mea culpa. I completely missed our break. Matter of fact, I ran 10 minutes over, so we're going to skip the break. I'm just kidding. We're going to do a break right now. It is 10 minutes after 4 Eastern. I'm going to put you in the lobby and give you a 10-minute break, and we'll see you at 20 after 4. So I apologize. I ran OT. Okay, welcome back. I'm getting a lot of noise. Somebody's got their microphone on. Yeah, hi. Okay, Mike is trying to get logged in. It looks like on a cell phone. Okay, we've got just a little bit to do before we wrap up for today. So I'm going to talk. If we're ready to go, everybody's back from the break and good. Give me a green thumbs up, and we'll launch into this last little bit. Looks like everybody's good to go. This little bit is going to include another breakout room exercise. So let's get to that. Some tips real quick are relating to evaluation methods. They should allow maximum flexibility. You shouldn't get locked in. The relative importance is not required, but it is sometimes very helpful. Some sort of a weighting factor. Separate and distinct criteria relate to specific SIR discriminators. Helpful, it should link so you can actually discriminate from one vendor to another. You can use it's a weird word, but it makes sense. Adjectival or numerical ratings. Adjectival is good, better, worst, or some adjective, terrific, terrible. You can use that as a rating or some sort of 1 to 10 scale. Should be selective, but also creative in developing screening requirements. Communication with offers during the evaluation process a lot of times helps clear up misunderstandings. You get better submittals as a result. Testing of products is encouraged if it's a physical product. Testing is encouraged as part of an evaluation selection process. An award based on initial offers other than the low cost or price is allowed as long as it's you can document that it's in the FAA's best interest. We've got another breakout session that I wanted to get you into. This is 20 minutes that I'm going to put you into. It'll take us till about a quarter till in establishing evaluation criteria. And again, we're going to use the SWIM as an example. This is on page 68. Again, it's the number at the bottom of the page, 68. I think you had to add 7 to that to get the correct PDF number. It's on page 68 of your student guide. And here's what I want you to do. I'm going to put you in your breakout session. And during the source selection, 3 factors came up as primary. Technical approach, past performance, and key staff. So I want you to work with your team to decide which of these primary factors, which of these 3 will be prioritized as the most important for the work outlined in the SWIM statement of work. Determine if you want to include any sub-factors. So your source selection team, you're going to use the primary evaluation factor to select a vendor at some point later in the course. Explain your rationale for adding any evaluation sub-factors and your rationale for choosing what the primary evaluation factor is. And then write your results in the notes section of your breakout room. And again, like last time, when your group is finished, copy everything in the notes section and paste it into the Word document that you have on your computer, because each group will be submitting one Word document at the end of this course. Any questions before I put you into your breakout rooms? The first thing, of course, is going to be to clear your existing notes section. But I'm going to set a breakout timer for 20 minutes. And the instructions are in the breakout instructions section. And if there's no further questions, I'll see you in 20 minutes.
was for us, but it was the other way around. Apologize for that. I was looking at the wrong things.
Okay, guys, I muted your microphones. You're back in the main room. We've just identified our source selection, our primary evaluation factors for the SWIM contract. Tell me, which one of the three, technical, past performance, or key staff, should be the driver for this? I'll call on somebody from breakout room 1, group 1. Start there. You've selected technical approach. Why did you select technical approach? Okay, you prioritized all three. Somebody from group 1 want to weigh in?
Are we the group 1? I don't know which group I am.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, okay. So for group 1, we decided that the primary evaluation factor would be the technical approach, because since SWIM is soliciting for a service contract, technical approach must reflect the degree to which the proposed approach meets or does not meet the minimum performance or capability requirements through an assessment of their strength, weaknesses, deficiencies, and risk of a proposal. And we even consider that since we do the technical approach as the primary, we can do a sub-factor on this one, like the management approach. Because in management approach, it can explain the efficiency and the effective of the program management itself. And for the technical capability, it will capture or retain the expertise of the workforce. And
Okay.
for the transition plan, it would determine their technical capability, if they can do the work in full swing after the award, or do they have to wait how many days after the award that they can do the work. And
Smart.
also, the technical approach should always consider the small business. So they may have the small business plan over here. And for the second one, we choose the past performance, because not all contracts you can have a record of past performance, or you can collect some information. And in this past performance, this is the assessment of the offerer's probability of meeting the solicitation requirements. And this is where they have to demonstrate the recent or relevant record of performance in supplying the products and services. We don't have enough time to come up with the sub-factors on the past performance, but the last one that we decided would be the key staff.
Very well-reasoned approach. And I wouldn't worry at all that you didn't come up with the sub-factors, because the sub-factors are on secondary and tertiary criteria. If technical approach is the main determining factor, you really need to focus your attention there. So I thought you did a really good job. See, group 2 and group 4 all chose technical approach. That makes sense. Group 3, if I read this correctly, it looks like you chose past performance. Someone from group 3 available to tell me why you put your emphasis on past performance?
Yeah, I think that I thought from looking at it, a lot of it was administrative work. Essentially, the contractors performing the actions and so forth. It's not really highly technical. It's whatever they've done in the past, how they organize the work, how they meet the deadlines and so forth, and the type of format they use, and the success that they had in previous contracts, I thought was more important. I think couple of us, we went back and forth with that. Some of us thought technical too, so we kind of debated it.
Yeah, it's interesting because when it first talks about it, it sounds like it's all technical because it's a swim program. But when you read the actual work, it's
Right.
mostly sort of documenting meeting.
Yes. So adding to that, what we call, because I think I was thinking technical approach for a second, this is group 3, and then I thought, no, past performance, because in our head, where this is not for actually developing anything on swim. This is not swim technical related development or any, hardware or software. For us this is admin. We want to see key personnel where they have the experience to come up with the briefings, maybe some strategic advisory help to the PMO officer. So sometimes it could just bring some admins, but they don't have enough experience to actually come up and create all these meetings and briefings. And, you can bring a lot of people with admin experience or some program management analysts, but I have seen myself, like, they don't bring the good skill set. So we kind of were thinking that way. Doesn't mean the other is wrong. It's just, just specifically for this particular work, right?
Makes sense. So. Makes good sense. The important thing is, like most business judgments, is not really what you choose, but how well you justify it. If it's justified in line with the goals of the program, if it helps the FAA achieve what they're trying to achieve with a given procurement, and you can show that it helps you achieve that, then that's really the choice that needs to be made. So good job, good effort. What you put into your evaluation criteria is going to dictate the vendor that you're going to choose. It's going to lead you to that approach. I was once in a solicitation, and they had like 4 business factors: delivery, price, I can't remember what, commercial factors, cost kind of driven things, and they had about 12 technical factors. So processing speed, memory capacity, on and on and on. It's because it was a bunch of engineers driving it, and they put them all equal on their evaluation criteria. And I said, what's more important, commercial and price factors or business? And I said, by far business. Well, not the way you did it. If you put 12 things that do with technical and 4 things to do with business, you're going to overweight technical and give it a priority over business. So that I had them sort of redo it. In other words, we have to have the 4 in the business combined to an overall technical business rating, and the 12 in technical combined to a single overall technical rating, and then relative importance between those two. So how you do it is going to very much determine who you end up going with as your vendor. Okay, look, we've got a couple more minutes. I'm going to go through, I promise, just one more slide, and then we'll be done with this section. Okay, and we can put this to bed for the day. And it's a very simple slide dealing with strategic source selection. So strategic sourcing is implemented through the strategic sourcing for the acquisition of various equipment and supplies program. It's called SAVES. I love it when the name of a group or program or law spells out a word. So the SAVES program. There's also some other FAA-wide initiatives like the National Wireless Program and the Software Enterprise License Agreement. But the SAVES program it's a simplified process for commonly used products and services. It gets advantages of volume buying, which are driving down prices. It's an indefinite delivery contract with a blanket purchase agreement with commercial vendors, with pre-negotiated pricing. So it makes it easy to step into SAVES and order stuff, almost like it's ordering right out of a catalog. Other sources can only be considered if something's on the SAVES program. You have to justify your not using the SAVES program. Other sources should only be considered if SAVES program would have some kind of adverse impact to air traffic control operations, or in the case of a bona fide emergency, we just need it quick, and there's somebody here locally that has it, kind of thing. So outside of SAVES contract, you have to get an approval or a waiver. There's actually a form, the SAVES waiver request form. And SAVES, it doesn't apply for procurements outside the continental U.S. So if you're in Alaska, Hawaii, or some of the U.S. territories, or even foreign countries, use of the SAVES program is optional. There's another note, is creating any strategic sourcing vehicle. You have to have established procedures that you're going to use for how you can handle exceptions, waivers, and the integration with existing strategic sourcing contracts, again, like SAVES. That gets us to the end of this. We'll start here tomorrow with planning the solicitation terms and conditions, which is the last topic in phase 1 of acquisition planning. I've got 5 minutes. I'll stick around in case anybody has any questions. Otherwise, you're free to go, and I'll see you again at 9 o'clock Eastern. Same place, same URL. And we'll continue on and finish phase 1 and move on into phase 2. Thank you for a good day, for good discussion. And again, I apologize for some of the technical hiccups at the beginning of the program. But you've all been a good group, very, very good comments. Thank you.
Jim, I have a question.
Yes.
This is related more. I just actually trying to find an answer if I should use SAVES. I just amazing to just the last slide, and I had a question. So we are trying to. I was asked if I could buy any stand-up desks. Right. I guess it's very fashionable right now. It seems like I got different answers. I was trying to get an answer from my fan certifier thinking, okay, I'm using my purchase card for a specific employee to buy stand-up desk. And I just want to make sure that, okay, we, allow this employee to have it, and then the whole floor wants it, right? And the funding may not allow me to do that. But on the other floor, a lot of people have already purchased it. So I asked them, did you have any, reasonable accommodation or anything of waiver or justification? And they told me, no, we just had the funding. We just bought it. So, okay. Did you use SAVES or did you just buy in Amazon? Different answers. So my director was trying to find like a guidance or something that says you need to use SAVES first, or I was told by my financial manager that I can buy stand-up desks, no problem. If I are going to buy something like it's ergonomic, I need a reasonable accommodation, something. But if it's a stand-up desk, most people have done it already, no issues, no restricted permissions or non-necessary permissions. But the other thing is, should I buy through SAVES, or am I doing something wrong by not buying it through SAVES? I think a lot of people are buying it from Amazon. But it's just like I cannot find someone say, no problem, you can use this or you can use that. It's like I don't find anything in writing saying a particular. I know a lot of people are doing different things, but it's just I don't want to advise saying, yes, you can do it, and then something I can find a guidance. I just can't find any of the FAA something specifically written on that. So just wonder if there's anything.
Yeah. First of all, you don't know yet if elevating desks are even available within the SAVES program. Remember, these are all pre-negotiated items. Each line item and price is pre-negotiated, so you don't even know if it's there. Specifically, if it is a part of SAVES program, you're supposed to buy through SAVES unless you get a waiver. FAA believes that's the best price. The guidance, if you look at the procurement guidance section, T3.8.6a, it's got guidance on strategic sourcing.
Maybe I can find it. You said, give me 1 second to write that again. I can go through and see. Oh, do you have it there? You can show me?
I'll share my screen and go to it.
Sorry, I'm abusing you, but I just really needed to answer that.
I'm going to go to here and let me see if I can open that up.
Okay.
Procurement guidance. Oh, what did I say? T3. What did I say? T3.8.6 strategic sourcing. Here it is. Let me share this page. Screen, window, guidance. Does that work? Share.
Okay. So
Okay.
I see it.
Do you see a
Procurement guidance.
document with procurement guidance?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Do you know how I got here?
Is that the FA tool set?
Yep. It's the
FAST?
FAST program. If I'll go back, do you see the, let's see. Do you see the AMS Procurement Policy and Guidance?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You get here from here, fast.faa.gov.
Mm-hmm.
And then here you click on this to go to Procurement and Policy Guidance. Then you click on the green one, Procurement Guidance. Then you look down here, it has organized by subject, T386 is strategic sourcing. And paragraph A, strategic sourcing, should have the information. I'd have to read all the way through. Here it is, first paragraph is SAVES program.
Right. Good. Saves. Unless it's not available in Saves, I think I can buy it somewhere else.
I think that's exactly right. That's the way
That's
I
what
read
I
it.
heard, but I wasn't,
So SAVES provide FAA with simplified process for attaining commonly used products and services, blah, blah, blah. Under SAVES, let's see,
I wonder if I should just write to someone in Saves and send an email saying, do you have any stand-up desks, right? Or something like that.
The waiver threshold,
Mm-hmm.
if you look down at paragraph D, it talks about the waiver form.
Mm-hmm.
In paragraph E, it says there's a threshold. So you don't need to get a waiver if it's under $50, but you'll never find an elevating desk for less than $50.
Right.
And so I think it's probably worth your effort to take a look to see if it's in the Saves. It looks like there's even a link to the Saves contract. I don't know if I have access to that. See, I've got to sign in with the.
Okay. Yes. So I can get in the link and ask Saves if they have a stand-up desk. If they don't, then there's nothing wrong with it.
You got it. You got it.
Right?
If you don't have it, then it's Amazon. And when you find a good one, let me know. I'm looking for one myself.
Yeah, of course. I'm gonna look for it and I'll let you know tomorrow.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it a lot.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Marcy, we made it. Let's see. Doris is still in there. And it looks like Maria. And we are on slide 88, starting tomorrow. I'll write a note to self. I'm always so brain dead at the end of the day. It's a good group, good input.